The evening air was warm and smelled faintly of garlic and tomato sauce as the mother and her son stepped into the cozy Italian restaurant tucked away on a busy Los Angeles street. Inside, soft lighting glowed from old-fashioned lanterns, and the low hum of conversation mixed with the clinking of glasses and the occasional burst of laughter. It was one of those ordinary places where families came to unwind after a long week. Nothing fancy, but clean, welcoming, and full of life. The boy, 10 years old with bright eyes and a quiet smile, held tightly to his mother's hand as they were led to a corner booth near the window. He walked with a slight limp, his right leg dragging just a bit, and his left hand stayed curled close to his chest, signs of cerebral palsy he'd lived with since birth. Slung over his shoulder was a small backpack, and inside it his most trusted companion, a tablet that helped him speak when words wouldn't come easily from his mouth. He didn't talk much out loud, but his eyes said plenty, curious, kind, and full of wonder. This dinner wasn't just any dinner. It was a celebration. Earlier that week, he'd taken 3 full steps without his walker during therapy, a huge milestone. His mother had promised him his favorite meal, spaghetti with extra meatballs and a side of garlic bread. She wanted him to feel proud, seen, and normal, even if just for an hour. They settled into the booth, and the boy carefully placed his tablet on the table, fingers hovering over the screen. A waiter approached, tall in his 20s, wearing a slightly wrinkled black shirt and an apron that looked like it hadn't been washed in days. He glanced at them with a neutral expression, pen already tapping impatiently against his notepad. "Ready to order?" he asked, voice flat. The boy looked up at his mom, then tapped a few buttons on his tablet. After a soft chime, a clear robotic voice said, "Spaghetti. Extra meatballs, please." The waiter blinked, then stared at the device like it had offended him. Okay, he muttered, scribbling something down without making eye contact. He turned to the mother. "And for you?" She ordered her meal calmly, trying to keep the mood light. But the waiter's energy had shifted. He seemed annoyed, like their presence was an inconvenience. When the boy reached for a breadstick from the basket in the center of the table, his hand trembled slightly. The motion was slow, careful, but halfway through, his elbow bumped the water glass. It tipped over with a soft clatter, spilling cool water across the table and onto his lap. "Oh no," his mother said quickly, grabbing napkins. "It's okay, sweetheart. Accidents happen." But before she could even finish mopping up the mess, the waiter let out a sharp sigh. He didn't offer more napkins, didn't ask if they needed help. Instead, he leaned in just enough so his voice carried, but not so loud that the whole restaurant would hear. Still, the tables nearby went quiet. "Seriously?" he said, shaking his head. "Some people shouldn't be out in public if they can't even hold a glass." The words landed like a punch. The boy froze. His eyes dropped to the table. His fingers, which had been hovering over the tablet just seconds ago, curled into his palm. His mother's face went pale, then flushed red with a mix of anger and heartbreak. She wanted to yell, to defend her son, to demand an apology, but she held back. Not because she was weak, but because she knew her son was watching. And in that moment, all she wanted was to protect his spirit, not add more pain to an already hard day. She forced a calm tone. "We'll clean it up. Just bring us a few more napkins, please." The waiter grunted and walked off, leaving them in silence. Across the room, near the back wall, a man in a dark hoodie and jeans had been eating alone. He'd ordered a simple pasta dish and a glass of water, keeping to himself, scrolling through messages on his phone between bites. But when the glass tipped over and the waiter's cruel words cut through the air, the man looked up. His eyes, deep brown and calm, locked onto the scene. He watched the boy shrink into himself, shoulders hunched, gaze fixed on the wet spot on the tablecloth. He saw the mother's hands shake slightly as she wiped the water, her jaw tight with suppressed emotion. And he saw the waiter walk away like nothing had happened, already taking another order at a nearby table as if he'd just commented on the weather. The man set his fork down. He didn't move right away. He just watched. For a long moment, he seemed to weigh something in his mind. What to do, how to do it, whether to get involved. But then something in his expression changed. It wasn't anger. It was resolve. He stood slowly, quietly, and walked toward the corner booth. His steps were soft, unhurried. He didn't want to startle them. When he reached the table, he stopped a few feet away, giving them space. "Hey," he said gently, voice low and warm. Mind if I join you for a minute? The mother looked up, startled. Her eyes widened slightly, not in fear but in recognition. She knew that face. Everyone did. But she didn't say his name. She just nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. The boy looked up too, curiosity flickering through the hurt in his eyes. The man smiled, a real, soft smile, and crouched down just enough so he wasn't towering over them. My name's Keanu, he said as if he were introducing himself to an old friend. I was sitting over there and I saw what happened. That wasn't right. Not even close, the boy blinked. Then slowly he reached for his tablet again. His fingers moved carefully, deliberately. A few seconds later, the robotic voice spoke. Hi, Keanu. Keanu's smile widened. Hey, you know what? You're doing great. Coming out, having dinner with your mom, ordering your favorite food, that takes courage. And you did it. The boy's lips twitched, almost a smile. But before Keanu could say more, the waiter reappeared, holding a stack of napkins like it was a chore. He barely glanced at the table, tossing the napkins down without a word. Keanu stood up slowly. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't glare. He just looked the waiter in the eye and said, calm as morning rain. What you said earlier, that wasn't okay. You need to apologize. The waiter froze. His eyes darted from Keanu to the boy, then back again. Recognition hit him like a wave. His face went slack, then flushed red. He opened his mouth, closed it, then muttered, I didn't mean anything by it. You said it, Keanu replied evenly, and someone heard it. And it hurt. So you owe them an apology. The waiter shifted uncomfortably, glancing around as if hoping for backup. But the other diners weren't looking away anymore. They were watching, waiting. He swallowed hard. I'm sorry, he finally said, though it sounded more like a whisper than a real apology. Keanu nodded once. Then he turned back to the boy and his mother. You two keep enjoying your dinner, he said softly. On me. And with that he walked back to his table, but not before giving the boy one last reassuring look, the kind that said, You're not alone. The boy watched him go, then looked down at his tablet. After a pause, he typed something new. The voice chimed gently. He's real. His mother reached across the table and squeezed his hand. For the first time since the spill, she felt her shoulders relax. Outside, the city buzzed on, but inside that little booth, something had shifted. Something quiet, powerful, and deeply human had just taken root. After Keanu walked back to his table, the air around the corner booth felt different, lighter somehow. The boy sat up a little straighter, his fingers resting on the edge of his tablet like it was an anchor. His mother took a slow breath, trying to steady the storm of emotions swirling inside her. She'd spent years shielding him from stares, whispers, and thoughtless comments, but tonight, for the first time, someone hadn't just noticed the unfairness. He'd stepped in. Keanu didn't make a show of it. He didn't raise his voice or demand attention. He just sat back down, picked up his fork, and continued eating like nothing extraordinary had happened. But the boy kept glancing over, eyes wide with quiet awe. He tapped a few buttons on his tablet, then looked at his mom. The voice spoke softly. Can I say thank you? She nodded, smiling through the lump in her throat. Of course. He hesitated, then slowly got to his feet, gripping the edge of the table for balance. His legs weren't strong, and walking across the room felt like climbing a mountain. But he was determined. His mom started to stand, ready to help, but he shook his head gently. This was something he wanted to do himself. Step by careful step, he made his way toward Keanu's booth. A few diners turned to watch, but not in a mean way. More like they were holding their breath, hoping he'd make it. When he reached the table, Keanu looked up right away. No surprise, no pity, just warmth. Hey, Keanu said, setting his fork down again. You made it. The boy nodded, then held out his tablet. On the screen, in big clear letters, it read, Thank you for standing up for me. Keanu read it, then looked the boy in the eyes. You're welcome, he said simply. But really, I just said what anyone should have said. You deserve to be here, just like everyone else. The boy's face softened. He typed again, People don't usually help. Keanu's expression grew serious but kind. Then they're not paying attention, he said. Because you're someone worth noticing. At that moment, the waiter passed by with a tray of dishes. He saw the boy standing at Keanu's table and quickly looked away, hurrying toward the kitchen. But Keanu watched him go, his calm demeanor tightening just a little. He turned back to the boy. You know what? I think it's time I talk to someone who runs this place. The boy tilted his head, curious. I'm not mad, Keanu added gently. But what happened shouldn't be normal. And if I don't say something, it might happen again, to you or someone else. The boy nodded slowly. He understood. Keanu stood, but instead of walking straight to the kitchen, he waited for the boy to return to his booth first. Only when he saw him safely seated did he make his way toward the host stand near the front. A woman in a black blouse, clearly the manager, was checking reservations on a tablet. She looked up as Keanu approached. Hi, he said politely. I was just at table 12. I need to talk to you about something important. The manager's eyes widened slightly. She recognized him instantly, but she kept her voice professional. Of course, sir. Is everything all right? Not really, Keanu said, his tone firm but respectful. Your waiter said something hurtful to a young guest. Something that crossed a line. He didn't exaggerate. He didn't dramatize. He just told her exactly what happened. The spilled water, the comment, the boy's reaction. He spoke like a witness, not an accuser, but his words carried weight. The manager's face fell. Oh no, I'm so sorry. Which waiter? The one with the short brown hair wearing the wrinkled shirt. He just served us, she nodded quickly. That's Derek, I'll speak with him right away. Please do, Keanu said. And while you're at it, could you make sure that family's meal is on the house? They didn't deserve any of this. Absolutely, she said without hesitation. And I'll personally apologize to them. Keanu gave a small nod. Thanks. That means a lot. He started to walk back to his table but then paused. One more thing, he added quietly. That boy, he's brave and kind, and he's working so hard just to live his life with dignity. People like him don't need pity, they need respect. That's all, the manager swallowed hard. I understand. Thank you for telling me. Back at his booth, Keanu finished his dinner, but his mind wasn't on the food anymore. He kept glancing over at the mother and son. He noticed how the boy was now eating his spaghetti with more ease, even laughing softly at something his mom typed into his tablet. The tension had lifted. But Keanu also noticed the worn edges of the boy's tablet case, the frayed strap on his backpack, the way his mom's shoes were scuffed at the toes. He'd seen that look before, the quiet exhaustion of someone stretching every dollar to give their child a better chance. He remembered something his own mother used to say. Kindness isn't just words, it's action. So after he paid his bill, leaving a generous tip for the busser, not the waiter, he walked back over to their table one last time. This time he didn't crouch. He just stood there gentle and present. I'm heading out, he said. But before I go, I want you both to know you're not alone. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small folded note. He handed it to the boy. This is for you. The boy opened it carefully. Written in neat, simple handwriting were the words, You matter. Keep being you. His eyes filled with tears, but they were good tears. The kind that come when someone sees you, really sees you, and says, You're enough. He looked up at Keanu and gave the biggest smile he'd shown all night. Keanu smiled back. Then he turned to the mother. Take care of each other, he said softly, and don't let anyone make you feel small. With that, he walked out of the restaurant, disappearing into the warm LA night, but his presence lingered. A few minutes later, the manager came over, eyes red like she'd been crying. I am so sorry, she said, voice trembling. Derek's been suspended pending review. What he said was unacceptable. Your meal is completely covered. And if there's anything else you need, please don't hesitate to ask. The mother nodded, touched by the sincerity. Thank you, she said. That means a lot. As they packed up to leave, the boy clutched the note in his hand like it was treasure. Outside, the city lights shimmered. Cars hummed and people rushed by, but for them, the world felt quieter, kinder. Later that night at home, the boy placed the note on his bedside table, right next to his therapy schedule and a photo of him taking those 3 steps without his walker. He didn't fall asleep right away. He just lay there thinking about how one stranger, famous or not, had chosen to care when it would have been easier to look away. And somewhere across town, Keanu sat on his couch sipping tea, not thinking about cameras or headlines or praise. He was just glad he'd been there, glad he'd spoken up. Because in the end, it wasn't about being a movie star. It was about being human. And sometimes being human is the most powerful thing of all. The next morning started like any other. Sunlight filtering through the blinds, the soft hum of the refrigerator, the smell of toast in the air. But something felt different. The boy sat at the kitchen table, his tablet propped up beside his cereal bowl, Keanu's note tucked carefully into the corner of the screen like a bookmark. He kept glancing at it between bites as if making sure it was still real. His mother moved quietly around the kitchen, but her mind was racing. She hadn't slept much, not because she was upset, but because her heart felt full in a way it hadn't in a long time. She kept replaying the moment Keanu knelt beside their table, the calm certainty in his voice, the way he didn't treat her son like a problem to be managed, but like a person worth listening to. After breakfast, she did something she rarely allowed herself to do. She shared the story. Not for attention, not for pity, but because she wanted other parents who'd been in her shoes to know that kindness still exists. She typed a short post on a private online group for families raising children with disabilities. She didn't use names. She didn't mention the restaurant or even the city. She just wrote about a hard moment in public, a cruel comment, and a stranger who chose to stand up when no one else did. She hit post and went about her day, folding laundry, checking therapy emails, helping her son stretch his legs before his afternoon session. She didn't expect much to come of it. Maybe a few hugs or "that's awful" replies. That's usually how it went. But by lunchtime, her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. The post had been shared, first within the group, then outside it. Someone screenshot it, blurring out any identifying details, and posted it on a community page. Then a local parenting blog picked it up. By early afternoon, a small news outlet ran a short piece titled, "Famous Actor Defends Disabled Boy in Quiet Act of Kindness." She saw the headline and froze. She hadn't named Keanu, but it didn't matter. People recognized the story, and instead of outrage or gossip, the response was overwhelming warmth. Hundreds of comments poured in. "This restored my faith in people." "My son has CP too, thank you for sharing." "Keanu's always been one of the good ones." She showed the post to her son. He read it slowly, then typed into his tablet, "Did I do something good?" She knelt beside him. "You did everything right," she said softly. "You stayed kind even when someone wasn't kind to you. That's the hardest and the bravest thing of all." Meanwhile, reporters started calling the restaurant. The manager, still shaken from the night before, confirmed the incident but refused to give details out of respect for the family's privacy. When asked if Keanu had demanded anything, she simply said, "He asked for two things, an apology and for that family to be treated with dignity." That's it. Keanu himself stayed silent. When a reporter reached out through his publicist, the reply was brief. He doesn't give interviews about things like this. He just hopes the boy knows he's valued. But behind the scenes, something else was happening. That same morning, Keanu had made a quiet phone call. He reached out to a nonprofit he'd quietly supported for years, one that helps cover therapy, equipment, and medical costs for kids with physical disabilities. He didn't ask for fanfare.
He just said, "There's a boy in LA who's working really hard.
His family could use some support. Can you help?" Within hours, the organization reached out to the family, not with cameras or questions, but with a simple email. "We've been asked to assist with your son's therapy expenses for the next year. There's no catch, no interview needed. Just say the word and we'll handle the rest." At first, the mother didn't believe it. She thought it was a scam. But after verifying the organization's credentials, real, reputable, and backed by years of community work, she broke down crying in the kitchen. Not from sadness, but from relief. Therapy sessions, braces, specialized equipment. They cost hundreds, sometimes thousands every month. Insurance covered some, but never enough. For years, she'd juggled extra shifts, skipped meals, worn shoes until they fell apart, all to keep her son moving forward. Now, someone had lifted that weight, just a little. She accepted the offer with a quiet thank you, and within days the first payment was processed. But the support didn't stop there. A local adaptive sports program heard the story and invited the boy to try out their wheelchair basketball league. A tech company that makes communication devices sent a brand new, lightweight tablet, waterproof, durable, with a brighter screen and longer battery life, along with a note. For a young man with a lot to say. Even the restaurant changed. The owner held a staff meeting the next day. not to scold but to listen. He brought in a guest speaker, a therapist who works with kids with disabilities, to talk about patience, dignity, and how to serve every guest with respect. Derek, the waiter, was let go after an internal review confirmed his behavior violated their code of conduct. But the owner made it clear this wasn't about punishment. It was about learning. A week later, a letter arrived in the mail, handwritten, no return address. It read, "I'm the person who said that awful thing. I've replayed it in my head every day since. I was having a bad night, but that's no excuse. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just want you to know I'm getting help. Talking to a counselor about my attitude, my assumptions. What your son showed me, just by being himself, was more than I deserved. I hope he keeps shining." The mother read it twice. Then she folded it and put it in a drawer. Not to forget, but to remember that people can change. Back at home, the boy practiced walking with his new confidence. He still used his walker most days, but now, when he stood at the edge of the living room and took a step, then another, his eyes weren't downcast. They were focused ahead, like he was walking toward something good. One evening, he typed a new message into his tablet and showed it to his mom. "I want to help someone like Keanu helped me." She hugged him tight. "Then we will," she whispered. "Together." And in that moment, the ripple Keanu started wasn't just about one dinner or one apology or even one donation. It was about a chain reaction of decency, quiet, powerful, and spreading further than anyone could have guessed, because sometimes all it takes is one person choosing to care, to remind the whole world what really matters. Quen 3 Max 8, 11. A few weeks passed and life settled into a new kind of rhythm. The boy still went to therapy 3 times a week, still used his tablet to talk in class, still needed help tying his shoes. But something inside him had shifted. He stood taller. He looked people in the eye more. And when strangers stared, he didn't shrink away. Sometimes he even smiled. His mother noticed it most in small moments, like when he asked to sit at the front booth at their favorite diner, instead of hiding in the back, or when he typed into his tablet during a school assembly. "I have something to say." That simple sentence used to take him days to build up the courage to share. Now he said it like it was ordinary. But the biggest change wasn't just in him, it was in how others saw him too. The story about that night at the restaurant kept traveling, quietly but steadily. It wasn't on every news channel and there were no viral hashtags, but in parent groups, therapy centers, and community centers across the country, people were talking about it. Not just because a famous actor was involved, but because it reminded them of their own moments. The time someone mocked their child in a grocery store. The day a teacher assumed their kid couldn't learn. The look on a stranger's face when their child made an unexpected sound in public. This story became a kind of quiet anthem for dignity. Then came the fundraiser. It started with a local community center. They'd heard about the family's situation and decided to host a small evening of inclusion, a dinner, a short play performed by kids with and without disabilities, and a silent auction. They didn't plan to raise much, maybe enough for a few therapy sessions. But when they mentioned the boy's story in their flyer, with permission and no photos, donations poured in from people who'd never even met him. A retired teacher sent $50 with a note. "I taught kids like your son for 35 years. They're the bravest souls I've ever known." A teenager sold handmade bracelets at school and donated all the money. A small business owner offered free adaptive shoes for a year. Within 48 hours, they'd raised more than the family's entire annual therapy copay. The center's director called stunned. "We don't even know what to do with all this support," she said. "People just want to help." The mother didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She'd spent so long feeling like she had to do everything alone, fighting insurance calls, explaining her son's needs to teachers, swallowing her pride when money ran low. Now strangers were lining up to carry some of that weight with her. And then there was Derek. He hadn't shown his face since that night. But one afternoon, a plain envelope arrived in the mail. No return address, just a handwritten note inside. At first, she almost threw it away, afraid it was more anger, more blame. But something made her open it. The letter was short, honest, and raw. "I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I don't blame you. What I said was cruel and it came from a place of ignorance, not just a bad mood. I thought I was having a hard day, but your son has a hard day every day and he still shows up with kindness. That hit me hard. I've started seeing a counselor. I'm learning about ableism, about patience, about how my words can hurt even when I don't mean them to. I got a new job at a cafe that trains staff on inclusive service. It's not much, but it's a start. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just needed you to know that your son changed something in me. And for that, I'll always be grateful. She read it twice. Then she folded it carefully and put it in the same drawer as Keanu's note. Not because she'd forgotten the pain, but because she believed in second chances, especially when they came with real effort. She showed the letter to her son. He read it slowly, then typed, "Everyone makes mistakes. What matters is what you do after." She hugged him. "You're wiser than most adults," she whispered. Meanwhile, the restaurant where it all happened quietly transformed. The owner didn't just hold one training session. He made it part of every new hire's onboarding. He even partnered with a local disability advocacy group to create a guest experience guide for serving customers with different needs. Other restaurants in the area started asking for copies. What began as one incident became a small movement in the local service industry. And Keanu, he stayed out of the spotlight. No interviews, no social media posts. But months later, a photo surfaced, not from a tabloid but from a community event. It showed him kneeling beside a group of kids at an adaptive sports camp, helping one adjust his helmet. The caption read, "Just a guy showing up." People connected the dots. They remembered the boy from the restaurant. They saw the pattern, not of fame, but of quiet, consistent care. Back at school, the boy's teacher noticed a change too. He'd always been bright, but now he participated more. During a lesson on heroes, the class was asked to write about someone who inspired them. Most kids wrote about astronauts, athletes, or family members. But when it was his turn to share, he held up his tablet. The voice said clearly, "My hero is a man who saw me when others looked away. He didn't have to help." But he did. The room fell silent. Then, one by one, his classmates started clapping, not out of pity, but respect. That night, his mother tucked him into bed. On his nightstand sat Keanu's note, Derek's letter, and a small trophy from his first adaptive sports tryout. He wasn't the fastest or the strongest, but he'd shown up. And that was enough. As she turned off the light, he tapped her arm. She leaned down and he whispered, yes, actual words, slow but clear. "Mom, thank you," her eyes filled with tears. Not because he spoke, but because he felt safe enough to try. Outside, the world kept spinning, loud, messy, sometimes unkind. But in that quiet room, something beautiful had taken root. The belief that one act of courage, one moment of kindness, could change more than just a single night. It could change a life, a family, maybe even a whole community, and the best part? It didn't take a hero in a movie. It just took someone willing to say, "That's not okay," and then do something about it. Months had passed since that night at the restaurant, but the echoes of it still rippled through everyday life in ways no one could have predicted. The boy, now standing a little taller, walking a little farther, was getting ready for something big, his school's annual inclusion assembly. It wasn't just another event. This was the day students, teachers, and families came together to celebrate differences, share stories, and remind each other that everyone belongs. He'd been nervous at first. Public speaking, even with his tablet, wasn't easy. But when his teacher asked if anyone wanted to share a personal experience about kindness or courage, his hand went up before he even realized it. His mom had helped him practice his words at home, not to make them perfect, but to make them true. The morning of the assembly, he wore his favorite shirt, the one with the space rockets, and carefully placed Keanu's note inside his backpack, right next to his tablet. He didn't need to read it. He just needed to know it was there. The gym was filled with folding chairs, colorful banners, and the low buzz of excited kids. When it was his turn, he walked slowly to the front, gripping his walker with quiet determination. Some kids stared. Some smiled. A few whispered. But he kept going. He set his tablet on the small podium, took a breath, and pressed play. The voice came through clear and calm. "Hi, my name is Nomi, and I want to tell you about a night that changed everything." He told the story simply, how he spilled water, how someone said something hurtful, how a stranger stepped in not with anger but with kindness. He didn't name names. He didn't dramatize. He just spoke from his heart. That man didn't have to say anything, but he did. And because he did, I remembered something important. I matter. Not because I walk fast or talk smooth, but because I'm here. And so are you. He paused, then added, kindness isn't loud. It's quiet. It's looking someone in the eye when they feel small. It's saying you belong without using words at all. When he finished, the room was silent for just a second, then erupted in applause. Not polite clapping, but real heartfelt cheers. Teachers wiped their eyes. Kids gave him thumbs up. One little girl ran up afterward and handed him a drawing she'd made. A tall man with kind eyes holding a hand out to a boy with a walker. At the bottom, she'd written in wobbly letters, "Be like him." Later that day, his teacher helped him hang the drawing on the classroom wall, right beside a new poster the school had made. It showed diverse kids playing together with bold letters at the top. Be like Keanu. He didn't know it yet, but that poster would soon appear in dozens of schools across the city, part of a quiet campaign started by teachers who believed that kindness should be taught like math or reading. Meanwhile, far from the spotlight, Keanu was having a quiet morning of his own. He lived simply away from the noise of fame. That day he was sorting through old mail when an envelope caught his eye. It had no return address, just a child's handwriting on the front. For the man who helped me. Inside was a photo. It showed the boy standing without his walker, next to a school poster that read, "Be like Keanu." He was smiling, arms slightly out for balance, but standing on his own. On the back, in neat print, it said, "I took 5 steps today. Thank you for seeing me." Keanu sat down at his kitchen table and just looked at it for a long time. He didn't post it online, didn't show it to anyone. He just slipped it into his wallet right behind his driver's license, a small, private reminder that the smallest choices can leave the biggest marks. Back at the restaurant where it all began, things had changed in quiet but lasting ways. The owner had turned the incident into a lesson, not a scandal. New staff now trained not just on how to take orders, but on how to see people, really see them. They learned about invisible disabilities, about patience, about the power of a simple "how can I help?" Instead of a sigh or a glare, other local businesses took notice. A coffee shop down the street started offering sensory-friendly hours for kids overwhelmed by noise. A movie theater added caption devices and trained ushers on inclusive service. None of it was flashy. None of it made headlines. But together it made the neighborhood feel safer, kinder, for everyone. And Derek? He never came back to the restaurant, but he did send one more letter. This time to the advocacy group that had helped the family. He donated a portion of his first paycheck from his new job and wrote, "I'm learning to be better. Please use this to help someone else the way I failed to help that boy." The group accepted it, not as payment, but as proof that change is possible when someone chooses to grow. As the school year ended, the boys' class held a kindness project. Each student had to do one act of quiet help. No photos, no rewards, just action. One boy helped a classmate carry heavy books. Another sat with a new student who ate lunch alone. The boy with the tablet spent a week helping a younger kid learn to use a communication app. When asked why, he typed, "Because someone once helped me. Now it's my turn." His mom watched from the hallway, heart full. She thought about all the nights she'd cried in the car after therapy appointments, wondering if she was enough. Now she knew. She didn't have to be enough alone. Kindness was a chain. And once you're part of it, you're never really alone. That summer, the boy tried out for an adaptive soccer team. He didn't score a goal, but he passed the ball to a teammate who did. After the game, sweaty and smiling, he looked at his mom and said slowly, clearly, "I played." She hugged him tight. "You sure did." And in that moment, none of the past pain mattered as much as the joy in his voice. Life wasn't perfect. There would still be hard days, stares, setbacks. But something fundamental had shifted. Not just for him, but for everyone who'd witnessed what happened that night. They'd seen that courage isn't always loud, that heroes don't wear capes, they wear hoodies and eat spaghetti alone in booths, that one person speaking up can give someone else permission to stand tall. Years from now, people might forget the details, the name of the restaurant, the exact words that were said. But they'd remember the feeling, that even in a world that sometimes feels cold, there are still people who choose warmth. And sometimes, all it takes is one quiet moment of decency to remind us all how to be human,